Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Zoe Clark and to Howard Edelson, Michigan Radio, political analyst, consultant, guru, all around. Quickly, I want to say,
that's the title now, guru.
Yeah, guru. Yeah, he's got shirts with that. I want to start quickly by saying a couple of things. One is there are some historical norms that we know about midterm elections.
Yes.
For party in power, the president selected. That first midterm election can be pretty tough for congressional races, so Republicans have that.
Yes.
We also have a very unsettled electorate, and anybody who tells you they know with specificity what's going to happen in this election cycle is either a fool or a liar. So what we're going to do is give you as good a guess as we can, and we're going to go exactly to those races. I'm going to skip all the way past the 6th District. Quickly, 7th District, Tim Walberg has historically had quite a bit of pressure on that seat, but he has prevailed. What do we expect?
Right, so it's always been that thing in that 7th about kind of money, right? And so as you're looking at the other congressional races, seeing where folks actually want to pool resources. And Walberg has always kind of been a little under the radar when it comes to that, but I think this is going to have to do with what kind of wave election, if there is a wave election, but we're not making predictions. But if there is, you would need to see a big majority for him to lose that seat, more so than, let's say, a bishop in the 8th or something like that.
And this is a rematch. Gretchen Driscoll is a rematch, and she didn't do very well last time, but there were macro impacts on that race. I think it's going to be a close race, as Zoe said. Is there going to be a wave, and is it going to help her? And at congressional level races, you really do need organization, boots on the ground, hitting doors, and that'll be part of the difference, too.
Mike Bishop in the 8th District. That's one that you and I talked about earlier.
Yeah, this is an important seat. This is an open. This is not an open seat. This is in part for majority. A great candidate, Alyssa Slotkin, who is raising a lot of money, a lot of organization. Year of the Woman, potential wave. I think this is a flippable seat, and Republicans are worried about this one.
Those are two potentials if they develop, but Bishop has still got pretty good name ID and has an organization.
He does, but watch this overall narrative of how Alyssa Slotkin is running as a Democrat. And we saw that with Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania, right? So sort of, I don't want to say establishment Democrats because she hasn't run or been in office, but sort of hawkish Democrats, right? And also whether or not she's talking about she would vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. And that's been something too. Same with the Connor Lamb. Where are Democrats coming down with that? So that's that kind of bigger macro level.
Yep, and Trump is going to be a factor. This is going to be a nationalized race. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, off-year elections, the party out of power tends to pick up seats. This is one of those seats. Trump will be a factor in this race. And in Oakland County, there's a changing suburban Democratic independent vote that's starting to trend Democrat. So all the factors are in Alyssa Slotkin's favor.
Yeah.
Will we agree that the Trump factor will be different depending district to district? I mean, there are some places where it's going to play much bigger, some places where it may be kind of a non-issue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the first up north. Oh, yeah, sure. And but again, this goes back to the making predictions about the Trump factor that all of us have been sort of scratching our head now for, almost 2 years about how does that narrative play. It will be very different than I think in the primaries, as we've been talking about this morning.
So if there's a Republican primary and Republican primary voters, President Trump has an 80–90% approval rating. They want his endorsement. So you get his endorsement, then all of a sudden, what happens in the general election in these marginal seats? Yeah. It's going to be an factor.
And in case people forgot, Donald Trump did endorse Bill Schuette. I just want to put that out there.
I heard that mentioned. 9th District. First of our open seats, what will be the old Sander Levin seat. What do we think?
Yeah, so that's going to be another one. I mean, I think we all can say safe Dem, right? Yeah. But open seat and part of this narrative. And looking at Michigan congressional delegation in a whole and sort of the lost amount of institutional knowledge, that this is one more seat. We've got, the dean of the House, the former Dean Dingell, and all of this institutional knowledge, and this is one more name and one sort of lion of the House that we're saying goodbye to.
What do you know about that? You have two good, top quality candidates on the Democratic side, Congressman Levin's son, Andy Levin, and Ellen Kojin Lipton. Both are very good candidates. They're raising money. They're working hard.
And watch the money in that race.
Yeah. And I'd give this one to Andy Levin. I think the Levin name in that district is a brand that can't be beat.
One of the races I'm the most interested in is in the 11th. That's where Dave Trott is stepping down.
One of many Republicans, incumbent
40
Republicans,
plus,
to be stepping down.
And he was a little early to the game.
He was. He absolutely was. And early to the game as a Republican, I remember it actually made waves, right, when he tweeted something about the president needing to tweet less and work more, or something like that. One of the first Republicans to kind of, be part of that.
So what does that race look like post-primary?
So this is a marginal Republican seat. This is an open seat. This is a flippable seat. If Democrats want to gain control of the Congress, this is an important seat, and I think it's also been targeted nationally. So you have 3 Republican candidates all working hard. One, Lena Epstein, who's outraised everybody, over $1 million+ I think she'll win the primary. And then on the Democratic side, you have 3 good candidates again. You have Sunil Gupta, you have Haley Stevens, and then you have Tim Grimel. All bring strengths to the ticket. That's a toss-up on the Democratic side, and it'll be who has the money and who has boots on the ground turning their voters out.
Absolutely, and that's another one that I would sort of say is within that sort of same region as the 8th, right? That if Democrats are going to take back the House, they would love, love, love that seat. But we'll see what actually happens.
I want to come back to that if time permits, because I want to move on to the 13th, and that may be the one that's got more people running in it than I've seen in a primary in a long time, and some people who may not be running in it, depending on what the courts decide.
Right.
Howard, let me start with you. Where do we go with this 13th, again, safe Democratic seat?
Safe Democratic seat. I think you have, as you said, the cast of Ben-Hur is running, but you have probably 4 candidates that, because of money and endorsements, really rise to the top. You have Ian Conyers, state legislator, similar name to Congressman Conyers' relative nephew. He's putting together a credible campaign. Brenda Jones, city council member. She's been endorsed by Mayor Duggan, an important endorsement. And the Duggan machine doesn't like to lose. So the question, will he turn his machine out for Brenda Jones? And then you have 2 other, Bill Wild, mayor of Westland, and Rashida Tlaib, former legislator. So this one's a toss-up, and it's really, is the Duggan machine going to turn out?
And a lot of talk about whether could we see actually for the first time a congressional candidate or, a member of Congress who doesn't actually live in the city of Detroit representing, much of Detroit in Congress.
I think part of his strategy is that you have all but him living in the city, and can all those people divide up the vote, and then the mayor of Westland sneak up the middle.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about resource, what you were talking about a minute ago.
Sure.
And I want to do it particularly as we look at the 8th, maybe not so much the 7th, but the 8th and the 11th, because those are 2 districts that you identify that if Democrats want to take over the House of Representatives, those are the kind of places they have to flip. So what kind of resource relative to other races or other states do we think they're going to put in here? Because this is a big race in Michigan because we got so much on the ballot, but all 435 members are up, and so there's pressure everywhere.
Sure.
So there's a limited amount of money. So are these the races that they're the kind of races they're going to target?
Oh, absolutely. Right. I think particularly the Alyssa Slotkin seat, because what we have seen nationally so far in so many special elections is that she is the kind of candidate that is winning these seats or has been able to. So absolutely. I think the 8th more so than the 11th at this point for Democratic money. But I'd love to, Howard.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're going to be very expensive races. They're going to be, when you have the candidate money and the independent expenditure money, probably anywhere $5 million plus, because you have to buy Detroit TV, and that's not cheap. And radio for our radio friends.
So when you look at this overall, and you look, and again, I know what we all may think. We may think that this paradigm is how this is going to play out. But after 2016, I have understand now that what I know is that I don't know. So when we look at what could happen, give me an idea of what the makeup of Congress looks like in January.
Yes, Howard, give us the makeup of Congress come January.
And numbers,
well, and
too.
have me back if you can call me a liar or a fool, right? I think at worst case, it's a narrow margin. Best case, the Democrats get majority. And there are other factors that are beyond all of our controls. That's why it's hard to make predictions. The economy, how is that working? Is this blue tide? Is it going to hit at the right time, or is it going to fade? What is Donald Trump going to do with trade wars? And, is he going to manufacture a crisis to, bring back his base? I mean, there's so many variables that are beyond our control. Hard to predict, but best case, they take control. Worst case, it's a narrower majority, which is good because then Democrats and Republicans are going to have to work together, because if you don't have a supermajority, you have to reach out across the aisle.
Right, and in all of this, we haven't even yet talked about the Senate seat,
well,
right? Well, I guess I just gave you the Ford promote of that.
There we go. You did. No, but so what about that Senate seat? I mean,
well, so we've got incumbent Debbie Stabenow, who's just proved over the past decade and a half that she is the candidate who just keeps going. She's got a large war chest and has really been unbeatable as a Senate candidate here in Michigan, and that is because she is a campaigner, right? And knows how to do this thing.
And she's a good senator. She delivers for the state. She's on ag committee and important committees for the state. So she produces for the state. She does good constituent services. She's back there. She works hard. And that's why the Republicans have a hard time recruiting candidates. And so I think Debbie Stabenow is on her way to re-election. She's not going to take it for granted. She's working hard, raising a lot of money. But
and dirty little secret, Republicans are sort of okay with that as a candidate with Debbie Stabenow. I mean, obviously, if they got their wish, they would put in a Republican. But what you see again with the resources conversation, you're debating where you're going to put your money. And you know what? They I think there are bigger races that would have more of an effect on us than trying to take out this sitting U.S.
Part of it has to do with the ability of a candidate to bring money to the table too. And I mean, a candidate has to show the ability to be a good fundraiser before you get the attention of the senatorial committee or the NRCC, because they're not going to put their money in until you put yours in, right?
Exactly right. I mean, to sell your candidacy, you have to be viable. So what does that mean? You have to have a good narrative. You have to be able to raise money and have the right people around you. And she has all of the above. And if, on the flip side, you see that the other candidate is so strong, well, you're going to take your resources and spend them in another state or another congressional district, because there is, believe it or not, only limited dollars. And at the end of the day, you have to allocate those resources, and it's a chess game.
But it is interesting to watch the Republican primary right now. Two candidates. We thought there were going to be a lot more, and there was a lot of talk about who was going to be in that primary. Now we've got John James, we've got Sandy Pensler. So it's going to be. We'll watch that one and see what kind of spending.
Well, look at Lena Epstein. I think she was running for the U.S. Senate, realized it was a lot of headwind, and then had an epiphany. Well, why don't I go run for Congress in the 11th?
Indeed. And we had the former Supreme Court Justice as well, Bob Young, who then dropped out. So now it's down to 2.
So when you get done with all of this, we are almost out of time. You think that at least over in the House, things will be very close, if not a change in majority. The Senate is already so close. What happens there?
I'm sorry, so the House, and then what was
the Senate? What do the pickups look like, or losses?
The Senate. I think the Senate gets more narrow as well.
Could be hard for it to get much more narrow.
Agreed. And again, but to absolutely go back to what Howard said, it is now the beginning of June, and we have months and months, and what we know, as we have all seen, is anything can happen.
And this pendulum, as you were saying earlier, the off year, people out of the White House, the pendulum swings back. It's how far?
Yeah.
And we'll find out in a few months.
We will find